From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
That makes me Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to the barn. We're out here once again. Going to see how well Grace and Glory, the two canines in our household, get along.
Yes, leaving them to their own devices for the next hour while you join us.
Glory was asleep. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, it must be some intentional design by our Lord to make puppies really, really cute at times, because just when you're reaching the end of your tether, it's like, I have things I need to do. I can't keep watching you. Oh, look at her. She's so cute.
Look, she just learned how to do this or that.
Yeah. It keeps them alive long enough to learn the lessons they need to learn, keeps us from just killing them. So,
Glory.
I say that jokingly, of course. We would never harm an animal, never, ever harm an animal.
I find it hard to harm anything, but there are some times you have no choice. The spider is coming up ready to bite you. What choice you have? Some
animal, scorpions, things like that. But we've told you the story of Glory. She was literally dumped out of a pickup truck on a 6-lane road in North Springfield. So we are thankful that she is alive, and there are times, where Grace has to tell her, you've overstepped your bounds. Mm-hmm. And Glory shrinks back. Like, oh, okay, sorry.
Glory's only 12 weeks old.
12 weeks old.
She's really young. A lot of puppies don't even get, find a new home until they're 12 weeks old.
Right. So she's learning the boundaries. But twice now in the last 3 nights, the two of them have wound up falling asleep, snugged up one next to the other. So that's a good sign.
That's a really good sign. Well, we've got lots to talk about today. Imagine that.
Please take a moment and download our app if you don't have it already, because that's a way to guarantee we never get canceled. Better yet, besides the fact that it brings all of your content directly to your smartphone or tablet, Roku, Apple TV versions takes it all right into your smart TV.
We're invading their home?
One home at a time. Mwahaha. A Fire TV Stick version, a Fire TV version is forthcoming from the developer. But the app, as we keep reminding you, and I'm glad we remember to do this because it's becoming more and more active. We're seeing more people joining on the app and engaging through the messaging feature to ask for prayer, to share prayer requests.
You can ask us
praise
questions.
Reports, ask questions of us and things like that.
It's really, I'm sorry, I just need to jump in because we love the fact that you guys are forming a family on that app. It is the Fellowship of the King, and we want you in there sharing your joys and your heartaches, your prayer requests, your praise reports, becoming the body of Christ in reality. We all know that we are the body of Christ, but we often don't act like it. And sometimes we just don't have the opportunity to act like it because most of us these days are living in silos.
That is very true. I'm old enough to remember when we knew pretty much everybody who lived on our block in Chicago back in the 60s. We moved out in the mid-70s, a big turnover in the way Chicago was made up demographically then. Colloquially referred to as white flight. A lot of people moving out to the burbs. But we were still the new people on the block after having been there for like 10 years, 11 years. So that gives you an indication of the stability of the neighborhood and the fact that you knew everybody up and down the block. But after we moved out to the burbs, we knew the neighbor on the one side, never really knew the neighbors on the other side, knew the neighbors across the street. And the reason I knew those people is because I went to high school with the kid next door and the kid across the street.
I grew up in the country, as you well know, and one of our early homes, we moved several times when I was a kid. One of them was a farm, and even though people were far away, I could tell you almost everybody who lived within a 5 or 10 mile distance as a child.
Yeah.
When we moved to DuPont, Indiana, which is just north of Madison, Indiana, it's a great little farm town, had maybe 300 people who lived in the town. That included a lot of the farmers. I knew everybody. We seriously all knew each other, so that when a child was out, on a bike or whatever, if you got into trouble, there was a neighbor that came, Sharon, get over here. Come on, honey, I'll help you. get out of the rain.
Right.
Or is your bike broken down? You okay? Did you fall down? Really, that little town cared for one another the way the body of Christ should be doing.
Right. So this tool is a way, our app is a tool that you can use to do that. And while it's not quite the same as having a physical body of believers around you, it is at least better than nothing. And because we do explore some odd topics, you'll at least find other people who share some of your odd interests as well. So.
And here's another thing to consider. Derek and I go to several conferences a year, and if perhaps you find yourself able to go to one of these, put out the question on the app. Say, who else is going? Let's all meet up.
Yeah.
There are times you can't actually meet in a physical space.
That's a great idea.
We have friends.
Blurry Creatures guys have been doing that. Nate and Luke at Blurry Creatures.
They're way ahead.
I know. It's like, we're still doing it the 20th century way.
Yeah, it's because we're old and crabby. They're young. But we've got some people from previous Israel tours that all get together at conferences to this day.
That is true. And still gather together on Zoom through a regular scheduled Zoom call.
That's another thing you guys can do. Get together in the app and get to know one another and say, hey, let's set up a Zoom call.
Yeah, just chat and share each other's concerns and help shoulder these burdens. Because we read through the prayer requests. We don't respond to all of them. Sometimes just because of the daily commitments of time that we have, especially with the puppy.
I have so little time to go in there and do that kind of stuff, but I do read through them.
We do read through them, and we see so many people in need of healing and in need of family restoration and things. And it's really tough if you're trying to shoulder that burden alone and you don't have a church body around you. So this is a way then to at least gather together virtually, if not physically. So we are just really, really thankful when we see that the activity level on the app. Again, the little notification bubble on my iPhone and iPad, it's always got more than anything else.
Mine too.
And I'm really, really happy to say that.
So coffee, while you're on the app, have some coffee from Gilbert House Blend through Kevlar Joe. We've got the link at our store, gilberthouse.org/store.
Yeah, Nick Fisher is the guy behind Kevlar Joe's. Great marketing. He does a really great job, as these kids these days in their social medias through Instagram. But he has partnered, and the reason we partnered with him because we saw what he was doing with our good friend Dr. Judd Burton and the folks at the Camp Herman podcast. And we tried
of that coffee.
Yeah, the Burton Beyond blend. Oh man, that is good stuff.
Bigfoot blend?
That Bigfoot blend as well. Yeah. So this is what goes into the blends that Kevlar Joe's has prepared for the Gilbert House store. The links at our store take you right to Kevlar Joe's website, but the 3 blends that we've got right now, and a 4th one is on the way. Amazing Grace, inspired by her black and white coat, cookies and cream flavored. There's the really smooth medium roast Sumatran called Snarling Dachshund, in memory of Sam T. And then the Bunker Buster, Derek's Bunker Buster, which is the dark roast Colombian. That's our favorite.
That is our favorite because we like really strong coffee. But every once in a while, I like to serve a guest something a little milder. So Amazing Grace or a Snarling Dachshund.
Right.
And it doesn't snarl at you too badly because I'll tell you what, a Dachshund, Sam, the minute he snarled, he immediately, I'm sorry.
It was instinctive. I couldn't do it. I didn't mean it. But then he rolled over and he rubbed his belly and everything was fine. But the blend that's on the way is Morning Glory.
Yes.
We got the title.
We are working with Nick Fisher and seeing if we can do sort of a cinnamon roll, maybe a hint of cinnamon and a French vanilla taste, sort of like the icing. We'll see what we can come up with because I know he's got some great flavors for other people.
Right.
And we want something that's got a little bit of flavor. Small batch, hand roasted, and we're delighted that he has agreed to partner with us in this venture. And we encourage you to support Kevlar Joe's. He is a U.S. veteran, military veteran, and also a home stater from here in Missouri. It's sort of our adopted home state. I'm from Illinois originally, Sharon from Indiana, and
I guess go back one generation. I'm a Hoosier too. Dad was born in Terre Haute.
Yeah, I know.
But we love Missouri, love living here in the Ozarks, and love supporting Kevlar Joe's.
Did you see the story yesterday that came out of the Louisville area, Louisville, Kentucky?
No.
Right across from Louisville is Jeffersonville, Indiana, and there are a number of bridges that you use to cross the Ohio River, and one of them is the Clark Memorial Bridge.
Right.
There was an 18-wheeler that went off the bridge.
Went off the bridge?
Sort of.
Oh.
Had a crash into the side of the bridge, into one of those strut areas, and part of the truck was hanging off. He was rescued. If I remember the story correctly. I saw the story yesterday, so I, put a call out for people to pray for this.
Yeah.
But boy, howdy.
Well,
how often does that happen?
Hopefully not very often. You don't see stories like that very often,
and
thankfully.
I'm sure the bridge will have to be inspected.
Probably, yeah. We were in Jeffersonville last year with David Hefner.
David, he lives in Jeffersonville, exactly.
Right.
And he's from Louisville.
Yes.
He used to play music down in Madison, Indiana when I was in high school.
Small world indeed. Well, a lot going on. We probably got to touch on Ukraine, Russia, things that are developing there, but also
I have to say, did you see that Joe Biden was talking about we've got to get aid into Ukraine, but he meant Gaza. He kept saying Ukraine, but it was about Gaza.
Yeah. It's, we've got family members who have and are suffering from dementia.
Yes.
So it's not fun to watch. And it really makes me uncomfortable seeing conservatives who mock and laugh at Joe Biden. It's really elder abuse, what the Democratic Party and what his family is allowing. Jill Biden should be ashamed.
I've said that for a couple of years, that Jill Biden should never have allowed her husband. If you were in a state like that, or I were, you would not allow me. I would not allow you. I would say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You would put him out for ridicule.
Yeah.
Placing extra stress upon him, which is exacerbating the disease.
Right. He should not be in the position that he's in, and he should not be running for re-election.
And my question is, why are his doctors giving him the okay to continue as president? If he were the captain of a ship, he'd have been taken down long ago.
Yes. Well, it's because we are living in an age where, and I suppose we've never been out of an age where this is true. This probably has been going on in American politics for
there's nothing new
since the beginning.
Sun.
Yeah, I mean, when Woodrow Wilson suffered a stroke, that was hidden from the American public, and Mrs. Wilson essentially, it was like that Twilight Zone episode, The Old Man in the Cave.
Yes.
Yeah. We have to go to this one guy, and he goes and talks to the old man in the cave who tells us where it's safe to plant in this post-atomic nuclear holocaust, and he's been keeping us alive. Turns out that the old man in the cave is actually a computer, but Mrs. Wilson was the go-between. It's like, well, Mr. Wilson can't leave the bed, but tell me what you want, and I'll go and talk to him and give you his answer. And Mrs. Wilson and Colonel Mandel House, who was a longtime aide of Wilson, they basically snowed the American public into thinking Wilson was still the president when, in fact, he was incapacitated.
Well, and I think many of FDR's weaknesses were hidden from the public.
Yes, they were. I didn't know until I was, late teens, early 20s, that Roosevelt was basically unable to walk. I mean, he was able to do it with crutches, but that was all hidden in the press.
Yes. So, his brain was fine. He was a brilliant man, but because of childhood polio.
Yeah.
Yes, he went through rehab for it. In fact, he often went to Warm Springs, which is a great retreat place that allowed him to do water exercises and things like that. But he did spend a lot of time in a wheelchair. And Jack Kennedy suffered from Addison's disease. And we never knew about that.
Right.
It was very debilitating for him.
So Joe Biden's cognitive issues, which are pretty clear to anybody who knows what to look for. Anyone in the media, the corporate media, who says, no, he's as sharp as ever. Look, they're trying to gaslight us. It's clear that President Biden, just look at, the way he was able to respond to questions from the press, even 5-6 years ago, or when he was vice president or senator. it's clear. I mean, he always had a tendency to put his foot in his mouth, but he could at least form complete sentences.
Yeah.
I mean, the appearance with Seth Meyers on that late night talk show this past week,
tragic.
where they asked him about his age, and he tried to make the case that Donald Trump's about the same age as me, can't remember his old wife's name, and yada, yada, yada. And then he lost his train of thought halfway through, and he's, well, whatever. Mm-hmm. And people kind of laughed it off, but anyone watching, it's like he's trying to claim the other guy is just as forgetful as him, and he loses his train of thought while he's making his
This is the point man for a lot of things that happened in NATO. This is the man who's supposed to be the leader of the free world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Boy.
It's clearly, the longer this goes on, the more clear it becomes to everyone else that he's not really in charge, that he's just the puppet who is being manipulated by people behind the scenes. Vladimir Putin made that point in the interview with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
He basically said, I don't know who to talk to because we've got these multiple presidents here, but the decisions are always the same. It's not the guy who's in the Oval Office who's making those decisions.
Yeah. Well, I think in a way that's been true for a long time, but it's more obvious to those of us who are willing to look behind that curtain.
Mm-hmm. It is a fiction that has been propagated by the corporate media, which serves at the pleasure of the deep state.
Mm-hmm. Think about it. A president, male or female, going into that office has been supported through donations from very powerful men and women.
Mm-hmm.
These powerful men and women expect something back for their donation.
They don't invest thinking that they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They want a return on their investment, which is why, by the way, the Americans for Prosperity, which is a think tank political action committee founded by the Koch brothers, Charles Koch, the surviving of the two brothers.
Oh, yeah. Boy, I'll tell you what, there's a documentary on those guys.
Yeah. Well, Charles and the Americans for Prosperity have pulled their financial support for Nikki Haley's presidential campaign.
Oh.
Yeah. They read the writing on the wall. So they're basically pulling back their resources. They're going to focus on putting up candidates and supporting candidates who align with their view, which is globalist. Trump? Essentially, yeah. Not America first.
Because Trump is Trump is a nationalist.
So what they figure is if they can't control the president, they're going to control Congress and make sure that Trump can't enact his agenda. So that's what's going on inside the GOP, the rhinos, the Republicans in name only.
I want to remind you that when we talk about these political machinations, I've heard both. Yeah. It's not because we're trying to say to you, let's all panic.
Mm-hmm.
It's let's read the room. Let's read the signs of the times.
Yeah.
And then look up.
For your redemption draws near. Exactly. So the globalist agenda includes, and I was doing some reading, just some scanning of background information on the Atlantic Council this morning, which is a very powerful American think tank, founded in 1961. Promotes.
I thought they were older than that. Boy, that's amazing.
Founded in 1961 to promote a tighter unity between the United States, Canada in North America, and Western Europe. Sort of another NATO, but with more, focusing on things other than just military support. They floated the idea, and the reason the Atlantic Council came up is because of some of the things that have happened in Ukraine here recently. Last week, President Zelensky of Ukraine got approval from his parliament to extend martial law for another 90 days, okay, they're in the middle of a war. You can understand it. The problem with this is that they had presidential elections scheduled for March 31st. Mm-hmm. So now that there's martial law, there's no presidential election. He basically has canceled the presidential election. It's been postponed until further notice. All right, how are we spreading democracy in Ukraine if that's what's going on there? His main challenger, it was a former advisor, and his challenger, whose name I've forgotten now, was running on a campaign of sitting down with Putin to negotiate an end to the war. The Atlantic Council floated an idea several months ago, back in November, that Zelensky needs to step aside and they need to form a national unity government, which would include the leaders of the opposition party, Petro Poroshenko and Yulia Tymoshenko, both former presidents of Ukraine.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Yeah. And they were back in the news this past week saying that they were, the time had come for a national unity government. Now,
wasn't Yulia ousted by the West because she wasn't playing ball?
I would have to go back and read that. I think there were some accusations of corruption, but in Ukraine, that's sort of like the way business gets done.
Yeah, I know, but that's pretty standard operating procedure. If you want to take down a president or a prime minister, you just, look at the scandal. Oh.
Yeah. So the situation in Ukraine is that it appears that intelligence analyses of the situation on the ground point to Russia being able to break through Ukraine's lines this summer and basically just roll up the front and take whatever they want. There was a story that just came out this week as well, based on Wall Street Journal reporting on documents that it had obtained showing that in April of 2022, so a month into the war, there were proposals floated by both sides, Ukraine and Russia, to end the war. And there were some concessions on the table from the Ukrainian side 2 years ago that would have, that since then have been dismissed as totally unacceptable. We'll never do that. But at the time, they were willing to make concessions in terms of becoming a permanently neutral state, capping the size of their military, the number of tanks and warplanes they could have, and so forth. And according to the Wall Street Journal, apparently Boris Johnson played a role in convincing Zelensky that he should continue to fight. And sadly, what's happened since then is likely hundreds of thousands of people have died. Ukraine has lost more territory. The city of Avdiivka, which was a stronghold in the Donbass that they were holding, within 10 miles of Donetsk, which is the capital of that oblast, that has fallen to the Russians. And so now Russia has no need to settle for what was offered to them in April of 2022. They could now demand more or just keep on going.
Been looking up Tymoshenko, and she was, I remembered her being part of a color revolution. It was the Orange Revolution.
Okay.
She was part of that. And then in 2008,
and that was back in 2006, wasn't it?
It was earlier than that.
04. It was during the George W. Bush administration.
Yeah. She, in 2008, decided that she was going to veto legislation that would have limited the president's power. She was president.
Right, yeah.
And increased the prime minister's power.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing that went on in Russia all the time. If Putin was PM, then the PM was stronger. If he was president, then the president was stronger. It just bounced back and forth. And that allowed him to be in office over and over again.
22 years and counting.
Yes, indeed. Well, apparently there was a snap election called because of what she said she was going to veto, and she was out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, while all this is going on, sadly, the area called Transnistria in eastern Moldova.
Is it Transnistria or Transnistria?
Transnistria, yes, is rising up. This is an area that is like the Donbass. It's majority ethnic Russians, about 220,000 Russian citizens there.
And we talked about it 2 years ago, after the initial invasion, that Putin was probably going to try to take over a swath there along the Crimean.
Right. Now, Transnistria is landlocked, as Moldova is.
Yeah, but
but it's on the west side of Ukraine.
But it gives access to a river, I think. There's some strategic... Yes, it's a strategic location.
Right.
And yes, there are Russian peoples there. And I think that it's the Transnistria region that just appealed to Putin.
Yes. They sent an urgent request to the Russian Federation asking for protection because of Moldova's growing pressure. Now, Moldova, small country wedged in between Romania and Ukraine, is pro-Western. The government there supported by the Biden administration, by the deep state here in the U.S. But the Russian state media, as of Friday, said that, no, actually, this was as of Thursday, so I haven't seen a follow-up to this yet, but the Russian government and the Federation Council, so the Duma, their parliament, and the Federation Council was preparing to respond affirmatively to the request of the Transnistrian government for Russian troops. The Biden administration says it's closely watching the situation.
Well, wouldn't it be interesting? Imagine over here if Texas decided to secede and become the Republic of Texas, its entire own entity. Mm-hmm. And maybe a conclave in parts of Dallas or Houston who are far more left-leaning. We'll call them wokeists. And the wokeists send an appeal to Washington. Mm-hmm. We need your help.
Yeah.
We speak wokeism, and no one around us does. We need recognition. We need some sort of we need access to the real world instead of this super red state that's around us. It's really making us feel oogie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which, yeah, all you have to do is just watch corporate media for any length of time to see how they feel about rural America.
Or imagine, parts of Illinois saying, if Chicago seceded, well, the rest of Illinois would just applaud.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if there were, really conservative people in Chicago, they might say, we would like access to Texas. Get us out of here. Or access to Southern Illinois.
Well, that's actually a plausible scenario. Mm-hmm. I mean, we would like to think that it's not, but you could actually see something like that happening here in Missouri if we wanted to, draw a comparison. St. Louis and Kansas City proper, the cities themselves are very liberal.
Columbia,
also. Right. So you've got these pockets, whereas the rest of the state is very, very conservative. Southern Illinois is very conservative, very much pro-Trump, pro-liberty, anti-deep state. But yeah, you could see a pocket like that appealing to Washington if a state decided we're just not going to enforce these federal laws with which we disagree. How far will it go? Well, I think watching what goes on at that park in Eagle Pass, Texas, will probably provide some clarity there as to what happens.
That's an interesting scenario that you just brought up, because St. Louis is a major transportation hub. Mm-hmm. It controls access across the Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Kansas City has, is it the Missouri that goes through Kansas City?
Yeah.
They have a certain amount of control. Mm-hmm. So Kansas itself is also pretty conservative, with pockets of, more left-leaning in the metro area. St. Louis could go to Illinois, but that meant Southern Illinois, which is far more conservative, would then control access. It's a strange thing, because there's no part of this country that is 100% one direction, one political agenda.
Right.
The exceptions might be those pockets where you're getting dense Somali, almost a tribal atmosphere.
Yeah, and areas like Hamtramck, Michigan, or Dearborn, Michigan, that are Islamic. So, yeah.
I can see this nation starting to crumble in the next couple of decades.
I think you could make a case that areas like LA, Chicago, New York are also tribal, based on which gangs control which neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mondo de la Vega has talked about that. Certain neighborhoods you couldn't go to. Even when my dad was a kid, though, growing up in the near north side of Chicago, mostly Anglo and Irish Poles in the neighborhood. So basically, people of European descent. But even there, it was kind of tribal. You had a certain area radius within your neighborhood that it was safe for you to go into. But if you went into another neighborhood, the kids over there might beat you up just because you're not from their block. So
didn't you tell me that in Chicago now, when it used to be the so-called mafia gangs that sort of ran the political machine there, that now it's gangs?
Yeah. The police and the politicians would have to make pilgrimage to the Italian mafia back in the day, the days of Sam Giancana and going back further to Al Capone. Mm-hmm. And now it's now it's the gangs.
Great.
And I don't know who the gangs are. When I was a kid, it was like the Disciples, Vice Lords, Latin Kings.
Well,
but I don't know who they are anymore.
Assuming the MS-13 has penetrated Chicago as well as New York and other big areas, I'm sure that they have some, power.
And then there's the Venezuelan gangs that's been coming in.
Oh my goodness!
Tren de Aragua. This is a relatively new phenomenon. This was a gang that only popped up about 10 years ago in Venezuela, where a union that was building a railroad down there saw the construction as an opportunity for grift, corruption, but they very quickly converted from a union that was basically saying, look, if you want to build through this territory, you're going to have to pay extra or whatever, to becoming a gang, and a hyper-violent gang. Apparently, they've expanded into Colombia. They've turned up in New York City. You may have seen or heard this story about the cops that were beat up in Times Square by a group of illegal migrants. Apparently, they were connected to this Tren de Aragua, or Araguan train. That's the name of the province in Venezuela where this gang originated. But apparently, they go into an area that's controlled by a rival gang, and they will just start shooting the prostitutes working for the other gang and then streaming the assassinations on social media to make a point.
Oh, yes. My goodness.
And the number of Venezuelans that's crossed over into the United States has exploded over the last couple of years. Thank you, President Biden. And they are moving into New York. Chicago police, Cook County police have said that they are now tracking their activities in Chicago, too. So this is a fundamental transformation of what's happening in our cities here in the U.S. And yet, go ahead.
Did you see the story out of New York? A woman's decapitated head and body parts have been found near a New York park. Kids found these. It comes after a schoolgirl earlier discovered a severed arm on the side of the road. It isn't just parts belonging to a woman. There are also parts that appear to have belonged to a man. This is in an area that the police believe MS-13 operates.
Oh, wow. Wow. No, I had not seen that story. I had not seen that story. So as if MS-13 wasn't bad enough, you've got this group from Venezuela coming into the country and doing what it's doing. And clearly not afraid of deportation, not afraid of prosecution, much less deportation, because they were arrested. They assaulted police officers and they were released the next day by the Manhattan DA, the one who's prosecuting Trump on federal charges for paying off Stormy Daniels.
Oh, good grief. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, how about if we take these stories and then go to the PID part of it? We start looking at the spirits that might be operating behind all this.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That is what we do, how we roll, and it's straight ahead on PID Radio. It's a new month, and we have a new special at the Gilbert House online store.
We have a crazy, crazy deal on all of our DVDs. They are, regardless of the retail price, they are 75% off.
We keep hearing from the kids these days that everything is going to streaming video, that DVDs are old school.
Oh, not for us.
No, we are old school. And besides, we don't trust the internet will always be there. So take advantage of this special offer. Everything from our travel-documentaries. Basically follow us as we go through the Holy Land and show you the important sites at ground zero on this supernatural war, plus video teachings, presentations, and much, much more.
You know, with 75% off savings on all the DVDs, as many as you want to get, you've got the money that you saved to go out and buy a DVD player.
That's it. Take advantage of it now online only at the Gilbert House store, gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
That makes me Sharon, and we are delighted that you have chosen to join us in our barn once again, and we wouldn't be able to be out here if it weren't for you.
Amen to that. This has become a very usable and flexible workspace for not just this podcast, but our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. 5 and 10, which we produce for Skywatch TV, is on that side of the barn. Video editing station back over there, and the Unraveling Revelation set there. And soon, the shipping office will be moved over into that corner.
I know, I'm excited about that. Get one more. It's a very small bedroom, but it's going to become my office. I have a writing room, but I don't have an actual desk.
Yeah, well, that will soon change, but this was all made possible through your generosity. We truly appreciate your support. If you are so led, there is a donate link both at PID Radio and at our main website, which is gilberthouse.org.
And those of you who do continue to help, we really appreciate it because, frankly, we still have operating costs that don't go away. We have to pay them either annually or monthly.
Yep.
And that's to try to keep everything we do available for as little cost as possible. Our podcasts are all free. You know, the app is free. We sell a few things in our store, but we're trying to discount those. By the way, in April and May, we're going to have a discount on some books. So hang in there. Those of you who wanted to have a deep discount on some of the books that we've got, the nonfiction and the fiction, that's coming.
Summer reading. Time to prep for that. So you'll find all of that at gilberthouse.org/store. And while you're there, look at the travel page, gilberthouse.org/travel, because the information on our solidarity mission to Israel in early May is there.
I know some of you.
Including the itinerary.
Oh, go ahead.
We've got a 7-day tour planned to bear witness to what has happened there in Israel since October 7th. This will be based out of Jerusalem. We'll be staying in a hotel in Jerusalem, 4-star hotel, and then traveling, taking day trips to Tel Aviv to visit Hostage Square, an exhibition based on that Nova Music Festival that was attacked. We'll go down to the Negev, visit some of the communities there, Sderot, 2 of the kibbutzim, and while we're there, we'll have a barbecue with IDF soldiers.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
That will be fun. And, of course, we'll visit the important sites. Ground zero in this supernatural war in Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, the Mount of Olives, the Western Wall tunnels, Shabbat prayers at the Western Wall. And while we're there, of course, we will pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and we hope that you will join us.
We really do, and I understand if some of you are thinking, okay, we could do this, maybe our tax refund or whatever we've been saving up, but we're worried. We're just worried. We get that. Derek and I, first of all, I think, look, whatever the Lord allows to happen to me, it's supposed to happen. So if he leads us to go to Israel, then we go to Israel. But I understand, especially if your family is saying to you, don't go.
Yeah.
We get that. So if we don't get enough people to go, we won't go. But we're going to try to put together a little tour group of about 20 people, 10 couples.
Yeah. This would be a very powerful experience, we think, to go at this time. And I know that if the news from Israel that you're seeing is all about Gaza and all the video is showing what's going on in Gaza, you might think that the whole country is in flames. But
no, it's not.
Our friends who are in Samaria, which the world calls the West Bank, tell us that for them, life is essentially the same because they're in amongst a number of Arab villages. So Hamas is not going to shoot rockets over that way because, it might hit people they don't want angry at them.
And they're not going to lob rockets into Jerusalem.
Right. No. And actually, there's a reason for that. From a Muslim standpoint, Jerusalem is where the Mahdi is going to reign. I mean, oddly enough, in their end times prophecies, Mecca and Medina really don't play any role at all. It's Jerusalem. Why? Because that's ground zero of this spiritual war. So we will go to a number of sites in Jerusalem, which is very rarely even come under rocket attack during this whole event. So Lipkin Tours wouldn't even propose this if they thought it was unsafe.
They would not. So, they take your safety as the primary importance in anything that they do. So if you're interested, go to gilberthouse.org/travel and all the information is right there.
And follow the link. That'll take you to Lipkin Tours' website.
Yep. Well, so the spiritual aspect.
The spiritual aspect of this, and I think is hilarious as we finished the previous segment talking about the arrival on our shores. Well, not really on our shores, crossing across the southern border to get into the United States, a surge of Chinese, as well as Venezuelans and people from elsewhere.
Well, anybody else would call this a slow invasion. It's not even slow anymore. It's pretty quick.
It is. There are some estimates that put the number of illegals that have crossed into the country since Biden took office at about 11 million.
Mm-hmm. That was 11 million that Barack Obama wanted to make legal citizens. Remember that? That was the number that was thrown around.
The dreamers,
mm-hmm. Yep.
Which he did by executive order. They never. There is no Dream Act. It was never passed by Congress.
What is the number 11 million? What is it? 1111.
Yeah.
Oh.
I did a program with Judd Burton a while back after we had a conversation about the gods that these people are bringing with them. As small g gods, they are demons or fallen angels. And I think there is some validity in assuming that these people are bringing spirits with them that they venerate that are not of God.
During the Jack the Ripper murders, I study all that because that's where the Red Wing saga begins, and I do that because Christian or non-Christian, nearly everybody worldwide has heard of Jack the Ripper, so starting there is a familiar spot. But as I was researching it, I discovered that there was a belief in the East End, which is where these were all taking place, East End of London, that some of the Jews who had been forced to leave their homeland by the Russian pogroms, they were essentially driven out of their homes. And many of them ended up in Whitechapel or in Spitalfields in East London. And there was a mistaken belief that the perpetrator of the Jack the Ripper murders was a spirit being of some kind. That was called a Dybbuk.
A Dybbuk, right.
This letter was actually written to one of the London papers, and I can't remember if it was the Times or another, but it was written to a prominent London paper. And this rabbi who wrote it was complaining that there was a belief that this Dybbuk, which is a spirit that attaches itself to a human being. Therefore, when the human travels, the spirit travels. And that this demon was either using the human or using other humans to perpetrate these murders. D-Y-B-B-U-K, I think is how it's spelled.
Yeah. That inspired the Red Wing saga, or at least the way the origin of the story there with the Jack the Ripper murders.
Yeah, the reveal as to who was or what was behind it.
Right. Well, I mean, that would certainly be one plausible explanation if we as Christians believe that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Hey, maybe there's a reason Jack the Ripper was never officially caught, because he was not a being that you could hold inside a jail cell. Yeah. Well, this is revealing, or it is manifesting in some rather disturbing ways here in the country, as we're seeing, for example, in the state of Illinois, a bill has been proposed there that would prosecute parents who refuse to consent to, and I'm going to put this in air quotes now, gender-affirming chemical or medical surgical procedures for children who think they're born in the wrong body. Also, parents who would not consent to an abortion for a minor child. The parent does not consent. The child can let somebody at the school counselor know, or somebody, and the parents can be prosecuted for child abuse.
In the UK, very similar laws are on the books or being proposed. And these laws would make it illegal for a parent to say no. Because if the parent says no, that's the same as insisting on transitioning back.
Right. Yeah. In the minds of these activists.
That makes no sense.
Well, it makes no sense, which is why it's a spiritual belief. This really is a doctrine of demons. The idea that you are what you think you are. Okay, well, I think I'm the third baseman for the Cubs. I demand a $9 million annual salary. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to sue. Obviously, it's ridiculous. Because it is.
Do I get to claim because the characters in my novels are all in my head and I have to put myself in their shoes and become them as I'm. So do I at any moment get to say I'm Charles Sinclair or I'm, Martin Keppelheim Or I'm Jack the Ripper. Hey,
that's
even worse.
Or one of these spirit
queen.
beings.
I'm Queen Victoria.
There you go. I'm Teddy Roosevelt. Charge!
Arsenic and Old Lace, one of the best movies ever. If you just want to laugh for an hour and a half, watch Arsenic and Old Lace.
Yeah. Murder for humor.
Raymond Massey.
Oh, as the
Peter Lorre.
As the criminals.
Yes, and of course it was
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant as the charming lead, and these two old ladies that were his aunts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, and Uncle Teddy.
Yeah, cousin Teddy.
Cousin Teddy, that's right. Who was burying bodies in the basement.
Thinking that he was digging the Panama Canal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another yellow fever victim. Oh. All right.
Well, let's jump to something else. I want to come back to Colorado and the state of Colorado there, where they blocked a bill that is just hideous. But as long as we're on the subject of humor and being able to laugh at things that might be considered politically incorrect now, Mary Poppins, the recommended age for viewing Mary Poppins in the UK was raised last week by the British film censors from U, which is universal. It's all good. Children can watch it. It's all clean family fun. It's all fine. They raised it now to parental guidance, PG, because one of the characters, Admiral something, I forget what the name of the character is. He appears in one scene. He's an elderly gentleman. Very eccentric, retired Navy, thinks he's still in command of a ship. And he uses a word that
is an English term for a native African.
Dutch. Yeah, Dutch.
Dutch term for a native African tribe.
Yeah, South African tribe. I thought it was just a German word that applied to like a German.
So did I.
Category.
Yeah.
And both of us, come on, we're fairly intelligent people. We read a lot, but this is an archaic word that hasn't been used by anybody in like 120 years. And here you got a 1964 movie with a character who's clearly suffering from dementia, thinks he's still in command of a ship, uses this word, and because of that, they've raised the age rating because it might be racist.
Well, here's the thing. If you're going to consider a term applied to a group of people, a term that is familiar to you in your own language, and that suddenly becomes the wrong thing to do, then we've got a lot of terms that we need to rethink.
Yeah.
Indian. The native tribes of the Western Hemisphere were not from India.
That is true.
In fact, the term India is a Western term for the native land.
India calls itself Bharat. Yeah. What's ironic is that I don't know many Native Americans, but those few who I do know don't seem offended by the term Indian.
No.
They weren't offended by the Washington Redskins either.
Are kind of disappointed when it changed.
Yeah, the logo was based on one of our Blackfeet ancestors, and now they've erased him.
Oh.
Yeah, way to go, wokeists. The wokerati. So anyway, now I did mention the Mary Poppins story on 5 and 10 last week, and I mentioned it as good, clean family entertainment, and somebody pointed out, he said, yeah, just remember, though, that Mary Poppins is a witch who's been hired to raise these kids.
I realize that.
Yeah, I get it. So it is ironic that that's not offensive. The fact that Mary Poppins is basically using, Tolkien and C.S. Lewis used the supernatural in their stories, which were allegories for the Christian faith. Mary Poppins, not a Christian allegory, but still clean family.
You can go and laugh.
You can go and laugh at it. And clearly Admiral, what's his name, was not meant to be taken seriously.
No.
But because nobody in the movie said, hey, that's offensive, the movie gets a warning slapped on it, essentially.
Oh, I know. There's so many crazy things.
But you're right. But there are many offensive terms that are applied to people who are not in protected classes, and that's all fine. And that, I think, is that's the point I wanted to make, that this is all intended to divide us and keep us at each other's throats.
It is. Well, for example, when I moved to St. Louis, I'm from Indiana. I'm an Indiana Hoosier.
Right.
But the term Hoosier in St. Louis meant white trash. Yes.
And I had, just sort of accepted it. I moved to St. Louis in 89, and by the time we met in 97, to me, it was just part of the local lexicon. What a Hoosier.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will raise my hand and say I'm proud to be poor white trash because that's how I was raised. My parents had no money. They were from Eastern Kentucky. We just had no money.
Yeah.
But why do you get to use a pejorative against a group of people that have no recourse
Mm-hmm.
but to live the way they do? Because there's no money, there are no jobs, and in some cases there are no schools.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had a 3rd grade education.
Yeah.
My dad had a 3rd or 4th grade education, and yet they both read voraciously. They were highly intelligent. My dad got lots of awards. So, Hoosier?
Yeah.
Not quite what you think it meant, but in fact, while we're on that, who was it? You were telling me this morning about someone who wanted to call people living in the country.
Oh, yeah. I've got that story up right now.
Well, there you go.
This was this past week on MSNBC. And this is thanks to an article by Matt Taibbi, who's a liberal, but he's an honest liberal. And he and Michael Schellenberger and Alex Gutentag have done a really good job with putting out the information on the Facebook files, the Twitter files, and just exposing the what they're calling the what are they calling it? The censorship industrial complex.
Oh, yes.
Taibbi noted that there was an interview this week with the author of a new book. The author's name is Tom Schaller. The book is called White Rural Rage, The Threat to American Democracy. And he got a very friendly interview from on Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, who asked, why are rural white voters a threat to democracy at this point? A threat to democracy. According to Schaller, I'm going to quote, which he... These are the charges that he makes against rural white Americans. Against us, yes. We are the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay, conspiracist, anti-democratic. We don't believe in an independent press or free speech, and most likely to accept or excuse violence. We don't believe in free speech? The irony here, of course, is that it's the liberals in American society, really the Western world, who are arguing that because we are such a threat to democracy, that social media needs to be censored, that our online communications need to be censored and controlled. We're seeing this also coming from UNICEF. UNESCO. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization.
Fan of either one of those.
And the World Health Organization.
Well, what UNESCO decide that they're going to call something in parts of Missouri in the rural area? Well, this is a World Heritage Site. Because it allows us to control it.
Right.
Oh, look, the Ozarks. World Heritage Site.
Yeah, this is this is how they view us in rural America, and it's because when you look at the electoral map broken down by county in 2016 and 2020, the counties that voted for Trump are predominantly white, rural,
Christian,
and at least identifying as Christian.
I think it's the Christian part that really, spiritually speaking, that really just, it's like a red flag to a bull. Oh, look, I vote Republican.
Yeah. And along with this, Taibbi reports that Paul Krugman, he's a Nobel Prize winning economist, only the Lord knows why. He's a Keynesian, so he believes in, more print more money.
Perpetual motion money machine.
Yeah, spent a good bit of his time on his in his column last year for the New York Times, telling us ignorant middle Americans that our negative feelings about the economy are false, that Bidenomics is working very well. And so it's
glad I wasn't drinking some coffee at that moment.
Yeah. Small towns in America have been devastated by globalism and technological change. Manufacturing is what is left of it has been sent over to China. And the people here in rural America who are upset about this just need to shut up, learn to code, and move to a city, apparently. Well, again,
shut up and let the hooks do their work.
Yeah, exactly. So the bottom line, though, is that this is the kind of anger that they want to keep stirred up between small town Americans and the coastal elites here in the U.S. to keep us fighting with each other and ignoring the fact that there are operators working behind the scenes for the deep state for their own benefit, and part of what keeps them in power and keeps us from rising up with torches and pitchforks is because we're fighting each other.
It is because ethnos is going to fight against ethnos, tribe against tribe, nation against nation. That's what is actually meant there. It's ethnos against ethnos. We're seeing a lot of that, not just here in the United States, but also in the UK, which is another source for news that I use a lot. Just today, I saw a story about Muslim men who got together and just beat the tar out of a young Irish gentleman, a boy, someone who's under 18. There's a video of it. And I'm not sure who said, I'll do a video of this extremely violent act and post it to the internet, but I won't help.
This is the love of many growing cold. But we are living in prophetic times, and we're seeing it manifesting on our streets.
We are. And it's so fast. And just I want to end with this. You and I are in the process of, especially you, in the process of finishing the Gates of Hell manuscript. And if you're wondering, as soon as this is finished, yes, I'm going to take a few days off, and then I'm going to start writing again in the world of Red Wing Saga. And I'm going to try to finish the revamp of the John Thundercloud novel that I promised a couple of years ago. It's called Angel Falls, and Jeffrey Martis has already given me a beautiful cover. I just need to do some tweaking on that. That should take me about a month. So yes, those things are coming, and you're writing follow-up to the God Conspiracy. So we're doing our best as we clean up from a puppy and try to deal with, what this puppy is chewing everything in the house.
Yeah. Hey, why is my foot wet all of a sudden?
Yeah, but those think that she's only 12 weeks old. So we're trying to do that. The Lord has called us to have these dogs for some reason. So we are rejoicing in that new experience.
It truly is wonderful. Again, the moments of joy and watching the two of them. Okay, we're tired now. We're going to snuggle up next to each other. I just imagine Grace, like the Dread Pirate Roberts, most likely kill you in the morning, but
she actually does love that little kid.
Yeah.
But getting back to the idea of writing the manuscript for the Gates of Hell, which, if you're wondering, will be available at the end of this year. You have come across a lot of connections to something that happened in 2020. We had the lockdown. We all know that. But a conjunction happened in December of 2020, and that somehow has just sped things up at ludicrous speed.
Yeah. It's almost like we've been shifting gears. Like 2012, something shifted. And it wasn't the Mayan apocalypse, at least not in the way we were, the way it was portrayed.
It's a spiritual shifting, a new paradigm that we're in. And 2020, December of 2020 really changed things. And I believe, as did Tom Horn, because he talked about this a lot. Josh Peck has talked about it. Ken Johnson has talked about it a lot. The idea that the Jewish year 5785, which begins in Rosh Hashanah this fall, that year, what we call 2425, 2024, 2025, that's another one of those years that's going to expedite everything. It's going to shift things into an even higher gear.
Time is growing short, so work while we yet may.
So we're going, of course, to Israel in the spring of 2025 when all of these things are supposed to really kick off.
Yeah.
So if you want to be there when things happen, go with us.
Yes. That'll be the Iron and Myth Tour. Dr. Judd Burton, Pastor Doug Van Dorn. We're still trying to confirm Tim Alberino as
He's
our third
actually
guest.
In Costa Rica right now.
Yes. Need to reach out to him through Jasmine.
Yeah, because something happened to Tim's phone. We found out from Jasmine.
But we figured
he's been incommunicado.
Yeah, he's been very busy. He's as busy as we are, if not more so.
He's more so.
Yeah.
He's got kids instead of dogs.
That's true.
He has five sons.
5 sons, including a little one who's still, So we will keep you posted. The latest information on that will always be at gilberthouse.org/travel. We're also planning a trip to Turkey next year as well with Aaron Judkins and Jed Burton.
I hope that actually comes off. I've been watching the politics in Turkey, and if things heat up in the Middle East, you can bet Turkey will be involved in some way.
Yeah, Erdogan has got it in his mind that he is going to rebuild the caliphate somehow. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. But we definitely would love to visit Haran, Göbekli Tepe, and some of those other sites there. I had mentioned one thing, and I'm just going to touch on this quickly and then just direct you to Mondays 5 and 10 for Skywatch TV. Democrats in the Colorado State Legislature blocked a bill last week that would set a minimum sentencing penalty for convicted pedophiles. House Bill 1092. Democrats on a committee voted along party lines, 8-3. The 8 Democrats voting against 3 Republicans to kill the bill, which is really disturbing. I mean, you've got Republican states like Florida now approving the death penalty for people who sexually abuse children. In Colorado, apparently the justification is that some of those people who are committing this abuse have themselves been abused, so they're victims too. Well, yeah, but they still need to be removed from society. But I'll talk about that on Monday.
Bottom line is they need Jesus. I mean, seriously.
It is a spiritual evil that is demonic, literally demonic. And I think it goes back to the desire by the entity called Shemiyaza, who led that rebellion, created their own children. It seems to me that for millennia, humans have been conned by this entity and these demonic minions, demonic offspring, that to get revenge on humanity by convincing us to sacrifice our children just as his children were eliminated in the flood of Noah.
You know, if you want to know more about that idea, Derek's book, The Second Coming of Saturn, really covers that topic so well. And you have a DVD where you sort of take everybody through it in 13 sort of episodes.
Right. And 13 was not selected because it's some, secret number. No, it's because that's 1/4 of a year. So if you're looking for a Bible study for 13 weeks to cover a quarter of the year, there you go. 13 20-minute chunks breaking down by bullet point the main points of the book. The book goes deeper into the research, I think 500 footnotes or something.
Oh my gosh.
So
you win the footnote battle.
Oh, got to try to keep up with the
late Dr. Mike Heiser.
Yeah, exactly.
And Tom Horn,
So,
he does it too. Well, we're going to try to get lots of footnotes in the Gates of Hell, and we will probably be producing a DVD to go along with that too, don't you think?
Yeah. That's one of the things we want to do more of here in the barn. In fact, floated the idea, talking behind the scenes with a friend of ours who does video editing, to maybe take some of that off my plate so that we got more time to create and sit in front of the camera instead of me staring into a monitor.
Well, exactly. It's that limiting factor.
Yeah,
if you think of all the things we want to do as the top half of an hourglass,
right,
and all the things we actually achieve at the bottom, it's those things like our time, our abilities, yeah.
We're coming up
you and I'd do 10 shows a week if we could.
Yeah, well, we almost do as it is. I mean, 5 and 10s, 2 podcasts, 3 podcasts, and Unraveling Revelation. So it's 9 a week. So yeah, just one more to get to 10. Yeah, lots and lots of content. We're taking.
Now I'm really tired. Thanks a lot.
Good thing we moved the old Nespresso out here to the barn.
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker, tomorrow morning, by the way, our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. Please join us for that. We go through the Bible verse by verse in chronological order. Still planning to get our trip through the New Testament transferred over to the app under a separate section. So, because it's at the rate we're going, it's going to be a couple more years before we get to the New Testament again. Tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker, Mondo de la Vega talks about his new book, My Crazy Life.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
I love him so much. I just really, seriously, his story is...
Yeah.
Like, he shouldn't even be alive.
No, he shouldn't. He is a legit guy, and he does in fact come out of the gang culture in L.A., and in the early chapters of the book, he basically recounts how he went from growing up in Guatemala to, at the age of 6, 7, moving to Los Angeles and falling in with the gangs.
No father. No father.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how he finally reconnected with his father eventually.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
It was, it's really jaw-dropping.
It's a great book.
It really is. It's easy to read, but it's very powerful.
My Crazy Life, is that
My Crazy Life? If God can save a gangster out of the ghetto of Los Angeles, there's nobody beyond his reach. Mm-hmm. So that's tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker. So until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.